Throughout history, the world has been shaped by the rise and fall of empires, shifting alliances, and global conflicts. The Cold War, which once divided the planet into two opposing factions, was supposed to end with the fall of the Soviet Union. But tensions between East and West never truly disappeared. Even today, Russia and the United States remain locked in a complex relationship, sometimes enemies, sometimes reluctant collaborators. Meanwhile, Europe has tried to forge its own path, strengthening its economy, military, and political influence. But what if that balance was shattered overnight? Imagine waking up to the most shocking news of the century. The United States and Russia, after decades of rivalry, have announced an unprecedented military alliance. For years, they have clashed over politics, economics, and global influence. But now, they are united. And their first target? Europe. This is no ordinary war. This is a war that could reshape the world. If the two most powerful militaries on Earth joined forces, would Europe stand a chance? Could NATO survive? Would the war stay conventional? Or would nuclear weapons bring an end to civilization as we know it? This is Hypothetical Hub, where we take reality and push it to its limits. Buckle up, because today, we're diving into one of the most terrifying what-if scenarios of all time. What if America and Russia allied against Europe in a war? The world is stunned. Overnight, the global order has been turned upside down. The United States and Russia, two nations that have been at odds for decades, have signed a formal alliance, a military pact, a partnership unlike anything seen before. And the implications are terrifying. Why would this happen? Perhaps the US government has grown tired of NATO, frustrated with Europe's independent ambitions and growing economic power. Maybe internal struggles, financial crises, or political instability have forced Washington to seek an alliance with Moscow. Or perhaps Russia, long isolated by the West, has made an offer the US couldn't refuse. A deal that grants both superpowers total control over global affairs, turning them into the ultimate rulers of the modern world. There are even darker theories. What if this was planned all along? A long-term strategy to divide and conquer, with Europe as the ultimate prize. Regardless of the reason, one thing is certain. NATO is about to collapse, and Europe is in grave danger. For decades, NATO has served as Europe's shield. It was created after World War II to prevent another catastrophic conflict. But what happens when its most powerful member, America, abandons it? Overnight, NATO collapses. Without American leadership, member nations are left scrambling. France, Germany, and the UK rush to create a new defense coalition, but time is against them. Intelligence reports indicate that Russian and American forces are already mobilizing. As European leaders debate their response, the first wave of cyber attacks begins. Power grids fail, the internet slows to a crawl, banking systems malfunction, Europe is being paralyzed before a single shot is fired. Then the ultimatum comes: surrender or face war. The world holds its breath. Some European nations, fearing total annihilation, consider surrender. Others prepare for a last stand. But in the shadows, secret discussions begin. Plans that could push this war to its most terrifying conclusion: a nuclear response. The world watches in horror as the war begins. In a matter of hours, Russian armored divisions storm across Eastern Europe. NATO's former bases are seized before they can be used. The skies darken with US and Russian aircraft, launching surgical strikes against key military and government targets. Meanwhile, cyber attacks continue to cripple European infrastructure. Power plants, hospitals, and transportation systems grind to a halt. Before a single tank reaches Berlin, Europe is already losing the war, but the European nations refuse to surrender. Germany, France, and the UK mobilize everything they have. Cities are fortified, military conscription is enacted, and resistance movements begin forming behind enemy lines. Yet, deep within the bunkers of Brussels, military leaders debate one last, desperate option: a nuclear retaliation. The war has reached its breaking point, and the fate of civilization hangs by a thread. After years of war, Europe has fallen. The continent is divided, one half controlled by Russia, the other by America. Cities are in ruins, governments are replaced with military rule. But the war isn't truly over. Underground resistance groups rise, refusing to surrender. A new conflict is brewing, one that could last for generations. The world will never be the same. And one question remains, was this war inevitable? Or could history have taken a different path? War is never just about soldiers and weapons. It's about power, control, and the future of civilization itself. If the United States and Russia ever truly joined forces against Europe, the consequences would be catastrophic. Governments would collapse, millions would suffer. The balance of power that has shaped the modern world would be shattered forever. But history is not written in stone. Alliances shift, leaders change, and wars are not always inevitable. Could diplomacy prevent such a nightmare scenario? Or are we already on a path that makes conflict unavoidable? One thing is certain, if such a war were to break out, the world we know today would cease to exist. Would humanity rise from the ashes? Or would this be the final war? The war that ends everything? Let us know what you think in the comments. Would Europe survive? Would the world ever recover? And if you love exploring mind-bending what-if scenarios, make sure to subscribe to Hypothetical Hub, where imagination meets reality. Until next time, keep questioning everything.